Good day, everyone. For today's podcast, let's talk about fauna and the carbon cycle with the title A Closer Look at Nature's Balance. Talking about the environment and its preservation or protection, what always comes to mind first is plants, trees, and all other greens and leaves in the environment. In simpler terms, the flora. Thus, we tend to neglect the other living creatures in it, including the fauna. Also, to make our podcast credible and reliable, I invited some experts and researchers to answer some of our questions and bring us deeper into this topic. So, let us call Mr. MILLAMINA to explain to us first what fauna is.
So fauna comes from the name Fauna, a Roman goddess of earth and fertility. The Roman god Faunus and the related four spirits called Fauns. All three words are cognates of the name of the Greek god Pan, and Panis is the Greek equivalent of fauna. Fauna is a term that refers to all of the animal life within a specified region, time period, or both. The flora and fauna of a certain place is a descriptor of all the life in a region, including both plant-like organisms and animal-like organisms. However, while this was once used as a scientific term, advances in science and our understanding of the relationship between organisms have forced science to adopt the more descriptive systems of taxonomy and cladistics to describe the relationships between organisms.
Oh, interesting, since this is fauna and the carbon cycle is part of the biogeochemical cycle. With that, here is Mr. CRUZ to discuss it first.
Biogeochemical refers to the study of the interactions between living organisms and the chemical elements and compounds that make up the Earth's environment. This includes the study of how these elements and compounds move through the biosphere, the atmosphere, and the geosphere, and how they are transformed, cycled, and stored. The biogeochemical cycles, such as the water cycle, the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, and the phosphorus cycle, are the key processes that govern these interactions. These cycles are important for maintaining the balance of elements and compounds in the environment and for supporting the growth and survival of living organisms. Understanding these biogeochemical cycles and how they are affected by human activities is such crucial for managing the Earth's resources and addressing environmental issues such as climate change.
Now we understand what the biogeochemical cycle is. Let us now jump to the process of the carbon cycle. Mr. Padilla, mind explaining it to us, please?
The biogeochemical cycle, known as the carbon cycle, describes the circulation of carbon throughout many Earth systems. The process of the carbon cycle goes around from the atmosphere to the plants, and then the plants absorb carbon dioxide to use it as their means of breathing. Then these plants exhale oxygen. From the plants, they exhale oxygen, which animals and humans then use in the form of oxygen. Animals and humans release carbon dioxide, which goes back into the atmosphere. Carbon is a significant part of how life on Earth has changed. This explains why biomolecules like amino acids, nucleotides, carbohydrates, and lipids are made up of carbon skeletons.
Wow! But I'm sure you all have heard about these carbon cycles in your science classes or such, but here with us as well is Mr. Rodolfo to share the connection of the two, fauna and the carbon cycle.
Fauna plays a significant role in the carbon cycle. According to research, animals are the ones that act as intermediaries in the flow of carbon between ecosystems and the atmosphere. Animal migration also contributes to the landscape scale dynamics that shape the variation in carbon exchange, and storage. This statement was proved by Schmitz and others. In addition, during respiration, animals absorb oxygen and release carbon dioxide, which will be utilized by the plants to make food and release oxygen. This shows a balanced connection between animals and plants in the carbon cycle. However, the extinction of animals due to the environment and human-caused disturbance affects the cycle, which results in an imbalance in the environment.
Thank you so much everyone for explaining everything to us. But now, moving on to the focus of our discussion, a closer look at nature's balance, here is a short narrative from various experts explaining the harmful effects of imbalance in our environment and its relation to fauna.
The environmental imbalance has negatively affected most biological systems in our world and is becoming one of the increasing concerns for the well-being and survival of many species. When examining the impacts of environmental change on wildlife health, multiple layers of complexity must be examined, and the interactions between different factors must be considered. Additionally, the existence of relationships between environmental changes and health in humans and animal species is well known, and it has become generally accepted that poor health affects the animal's natural behaviors and welfare, and consequently, food safety and production quality. Each organism serves a specific role and purpose in an ecosystem, and disturbing this balance can be detrimental to all the living things relying on it. Therefore, the system's response to these disturbances is described by Le Chatelier's principle, where the system will respond in a way that counteracts the disturbance.
According to Le Chatelier's principle, if such a dynamic equilibrium is disturbed and became unbalanced by altering the conditions, the equilibrium point will adjust to compensate for the change and restore the equilibrium. From agricultural practices to animal consumption that contribute to the atmosphere's increase in greenhouse gases like methane and carbon dioxide. Carbon goes up to the food chain as plants are consumed by herbivores and herbivores are consumed by carnivores. While this happens, carbon dioxide from the respiration of animals, plants, and microorganisms returns to the atmosphere. In that manner, the balance in our nature can lead to chaos and cause irreversible effects in the environment if any of these events and the role of fauna in balancing the carbon cycle and other biogeochemical cycles are disregarded, especially if another uninvited guest is to mess the nature's balance, called the invasive species.
A destructive plant or animal is considered to be an invasive species when it is introduced to a region where it is not naturally occurring. Non-native species are not all invasive though. These big and small invaders may not seem to pose a threat, but they have a terrible impact on wildlife. One of the main factors reducing biodiversity worldwide is invasive species. Native species are directly threatened by invasive species. When they prey on them, compete with them or for food or other sources, spread diseases, prevent native species from reproducing or killing their youngs. Moreover, invasive species pose indirect threats as well. By destroying or substituting native food sources, they have the potential to alter the ecosystem's food chain. Human activity is almost always the cause of invasive species spread. Due to the growth of activities like trade and tourism, people and goods can now travel to any part of the world, frequently and intentionally bring invasive species with them.
Epigenetic studies changes in gene expression or cellular phenotype caused by mechanisms such as environmental stresses. Epigenetics plays a role in a wide range of biological processes, including development, aging, and disease. Epigenetics also plays a role in the fauna, and it has been studied in various animals. Its modifications can affect an animal's development, behavior, and response to environmental changes, and scientists are actively studying the role of epigenetics in a wide variety of animal species.
Indeed, with all this information given to us, we can now end our episode. Here is a final message from an environmental specialist and advocate, Ms. De La Cruz.
Hello! So, from all those talks with various experts and researchers, as well as several narratives, it was established that the carbon cycle is undoubtedly a vital part of how our planet functions. Carbon cycles through the atmosphere, biosphere, geosphere, and hydrosphere via processes that include photosynthesis, fire, the burning of fossil fuels, weathering, and volcanism. However, human activity has upset the carbon cycle's delicate equilibrium, causing more carbon dioxide to accumulate in the atmosphere and resulting in climate change. Thus, the evidence is irrefutable. Unless we act immediately to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we will not be able to stave off the worst consequences of the climate change. It is therefore imperative that we act to lessen our dependence on fossil fuels and prevent further damage to our planet. For instance, as individuals, we can slow down global warming by implementing small, more sustainable actions within our community. Indeed, we are aware that climate change is happening and that human activity is to blame. Climate inaction is therefore not an option. The time for action is now. Besides, we have the knowledge and the technology to reduce our impact on the climate and ease the pressures on the world's most vulnerable places, people, and wildlife. We just need to make it happen, because obviously, nothing will work unless you do. So rise up, grow up, and show up. See you at the top.
The climate
It is changing.
And so should we.
The change starts
With you and me.
Let's end
Climate change.